Hey guys, Mr. Haynes here. Today's lesson is going to be over how to find absolute advantage, comparative advantage, and to find out who should specialize in a trade relationship between two countries. Okay. The foundation of this is going to be on finding out how to calculate opportunity cost. So if you're not feeling so good or so confident with how to calculate opportunity cost, please stop this video and look at some of the other videos where I was teaching you how to calculate opportunity cost, okay? Have to get that right in order for us to succeed with comparative advantage and specialization, okay? All right, so before I get started, what I wanted to do is take a look at this table, okay? Some of the other problems that we've been practicing with had the products up here. So we had like iPhones and laptops over here. We had China in the United States, okay? Sometimes the tables are going to be flipped. Okay, in this case, instead of the products being up here, we have the countries. We have Caronville and we have Laurenland. Okay, down here we have the products, root beer, and we have pretzels. Okay, so sometimes they're going to be flipped. You just have to be able to make sense of what the table or how the table is structured, so you can get the information properly. Okay. All right, starting off, we're going to start with the first step and find opportunity cost. Okay. All right, Caronville. Caronville produces root beer and pretzels. Again, remember those steps, okay? We want to set the problem up, which I already did. We want to find what they do worse, put the bigger number on top. We want to flip it and solve, okay? So, out of root beer and pretzels, what does Caronville do worse? Root beer. They make less root beer, okay? So we go to root beer, we point at it, and then we put the bigger number on top. It's going to be 20 over 10. And then we flip it, and then we're going to have to solve, okay? This one is going to end up being 2 pretzels. So the opportunity cost for Caronville to make 1 root beer is 2 pretzels. They give up 2 pretzels. It costs them 2 pretzels to make that 1 root beer, okay? Now down here, this is going to be 1/2 of a root beer, okay? So now we know the opportunity cost for making a 1 root beer and 1 pretzel for Caronville. Now we're going to do it for L-Land. What do they do worse? Root beer. So we're going to go to root beer, we're going to point at it, and then the bigger number goes on top. So 30 over 12, and then 12 over 30. Okay? Okay, now we need to solve. If we look at this and we simplify it, we're going to get 5 halves. Okay? But the problem with improper fractions is it's kind of hard to look at 2 different fractions if they're improper and figure out which is bigger and which is smaller. So my recommendation is you always simplify improper fractions to mixed numbers, okay? So this one is going to come out to being 2.5 pretzels, and then down here we need to solve for this one. This is going to be simply 2/5, okay? Oh. 2/5 of a root beer, okay? So now we've calculated opportunity cost. That's good. So we're going to put a check. Boom, I did that step. I'm 1/4 of the way through already. Now, when we're looking at absolute advantage, this is going to be the easiest thing that I teach you all year. It's literally looking at 2 numbers and telling me which one is bigger, okay? So the absolute advantage, if we're looking at Caronville, they have an absolute advantage. They can just make more of pretzels. So when we're looking for absolute advantage, we look at the 2 products that the country can make, and whatever the bigger number is, that's your absolute advantage. I'm going to circle that, and I put a AA for absolute advantage. It's literally just finding the biggest number of the 2 products that they make, or whatever they can make more of. Now Laurenland, we're going to look at those 2 numbers. What is their absolute advantage? Pretzels, because 30 is greater than 12, absolute advantage. Okay, now that step is completed. So what we're going to do is go boom. Okay, now when we're finding absolute advantage, you might just be asked in a question form or a sentence form as a question on an assessment, but always know that all you have to do is just compare the 2 numbers of the products that they make. The larger number is their absolute advantage. That means if they put all their resources, that's how they would have an absolute advantage in making that specific thing. Okay. That's not how we decide who makes what. Comparative advantage is where we find out who makes what, okay? because we want to find out who makes things at the lowest cost, because if they make it at a lower cost, then they can make more money off of it and make more profit, okay? So, again, that foundation was opportunity cost for comparative advantage. So now we look at our opportunity costs here, okay? And when we're doing this, I want you to point with your left hand, left finger, pointer finger on your left hand, something like that. And I want you to look over here at one root beer. We want to find out who makes root beer at a lower cost, Caronville or Lorenland, okay? So I want you to look to the left at one root beer, okay? Now compare those two, okay? In order for Caronville to make one root beer, they give up 2 pretzels. In order for Lorenland to make one root beer, they give up making 2.5 pretzels. So who has the lower opportunity cost of making one root beer? Caronville, because 2 is less than 2.5. I'm going to circle that, okay? They have the lower opportunity cost, okay? But more specifically, they have a comparative advantage. They can make that at a lower cost, so why they're going to make that and then sell it to L-Land, because they can make it at a lower cost. L-Land, they're not going to make it themselves because they can buy it cheaper from Caronville, okay? All right, next product, pretzels. Who makes pretzels at a lower opportunity cost? Okay, so pretzels over here, we're going to look to the left at the items that we're creating, and the cost is what they're giving up. They're giving up making some sort of root beer. So here, what is lower? 1/2 or 2/5? It's 2/5, okay? So we're going to circle that, and we're going to say that Lorenland has a lower opportunity cost of making pretzels because they only give up 2/5 of a root beer instead of 1/2 of a root beer, okay? So I'm going to put a CA here for comparative advantage. They have the lower opportunity cost of making pretzels, so they have a comparative advantage, okay? All right, when we are looking at this, I want you to always remember, okay? If a country has an absolute, actually before we get rolling, I'm gonna check that off because we found out who has a comparative advantage, okay? As we're going through this, I want you to remember 2 short, simple things. A country can have, one country can have an absolute advantage in both products. Okay, they can have an absolute advantage in 2 products. But only one country can have comparative advantage in one product. Okay, so only one country can have comparative advantage in one product. You are never ever going to have an example to where one country has the comparative advantage in both products. Why? Because they wouldn't be trading with somebody else. If Caronville could produce both of these at a lower cost than Lorenland, then why are they even trading with Lorenland? They can make it at a lower opportunity cost both ways. They don't want to pay more money for somebody else to make it when they can make it themselves at a cheaper cost, okay? Okay, so remember these 2 things. Again, a country can have an absolute advantage in both products, but only a comparative advantage in one, okay? So now, the last step, we're going to talk about specializing, okay? And this is piggybacking right off of who has a comparative advantage, okay? So I'm going to use green here. Okay, so if we're looking at this, after having gone through these 3 steps, who should specialize in what product? If we look up here, root beer, okay, we see that Caronville has a comparative advantage in root beer, so they should specialize in that. They should specialize in that because they make it at a lower cost, so then they can sell it to somebody else and make money. All right? Down here, Lorenland, they have a comparative advantage in pretzels, so that's what they should specialize in. Okay, so if Caronville has a comparative advantage and they should specialize in root beer, and Lorenland has a comparative advantage in pretzels, and they make those and specialize in those, these countries are going to trade these 2 things. They're going to find out what they do best. They're going to specialize in that. They're going to find somebody else who specializes in something else, and then they're going to trade, okay? So, 4 steps. You already know 1 step. Second step is probably the easiest thing you might do this year. Third step is just following the work that you've put in to understanding how to calculate opportunity cost, okay? And then we find comparative advantage in specialization, okay?